we have some skateboarders here, so let's talk about skateboarding. I'm gonna talk about the Del Mar Skate Ranch a little bit. So today's little show and tell piece will be this. I'll try not to drop it on my computer. Here we are. So Del Mar locals will know which pool this came from by the color of the tile. And I won't make people chime in because, you don't have to. but anyway, so this, the yellow and blue, comes from the infamous square pool. And the Del Mar, so the way the skate ranch was set up, there was the big freestyle reservoir, we call it the res, right at the very front, at the parking lot, basically. And then just in from that is where the famous keyhole was, where all the contests were held and all the really famous pictures. But then up behind the keyhole, there was a series of pools. There was 3 pools. The one right above it was the kidney, or the Kona Bowl, little orange tile kidney-shaped pool. On the other side of that was the Egg Bowl, which was a giant 12-foot thing. It was really rough and had no coping or tile. But on the other side of the Egg Bowl was the square pool. And unlike some other parks, the square pool really only had 3 deep end walls with the coping and tile. And then it went up as a waterfall, they say, up to the shallow end. And the shallow end was kind of this weird, big, mellow thing that the sides, as you got towards the deep end, they got actually kind of almost a vertical, but it was only maybe 6 feet high, and then it dropped down into the big bowl. But it had really rounded lip, so you could kind of do a bunch of stuff without hanging up and getting hung up on the coping, and you didn't have to worry about the coping because it wasn't there. So you could learn about getting to the top without the danger of getting hung up by the coping. So when you went for the very end of it, or the entrance of it, was pretty mellow. And so it kind of worked its way a little steeper and steeper until it kind of melted into the deep end with I'm going to just keep holding these up, the yellow and blue tiles. So this is where, I like to say that the locals kind of learned skate park etiquette and just social etiquette in general. So, the freestyle area being little small banks and kind of wide open, a bunch of people could skate at once. But the keyhole was sort of like, that was the top tier. And you always, that's where like the best skaters at the park spent most of their time. So when you're an up and coming skater, if there's nobody in there, you kind of go in there. But when it was a heated session of like the locals and the local pros, like Tony Hawk and Kevin Staub, or like the hardcore locals that have been there forever and ever, like Owen Nieder and Dave Swift and Todd Swank, those guys had kind of been there before you, then you kind of went and skated other stuff while they were having their session because you didn't want to encroach. Well, at least me. I didn't want to be in there and skating at the bottom while they're trying to work on actual stuff. So I would go skate other things in the park. And I ended up skating in the square pool a lot because, the entrance you could just kind of roll into and roll sort of sideways and then kind of start skating back to forth in the shallow end. And you could kind of just take your time and ease into things, and I learn how to kick turn, learn how to keep my speed, learn how to go back and forth, fakie, go backwards, and stuff like that, and learning how to work your way up to the lip and keep your speed without the better guys having to wait and wait and wait while you went back and forth doing nothing over and over and over again. But I spent hours and hours and hours skating the square pool all by myself and learning just the basics. Jeremy Ray, I wave at you. Jeremy, I'm talking about the Del Mar square pool. So, yeah, coping it or tile blue and yellow tile from Del Mar Square Pool. Yes, and then see, I knew, yeah. Bill Billing here, old bro for life, hardcore Del Mar local, former employee at the Del Mar Skate Ranch, but he knows. So yes, as mellow as the shallow end of the square pool was, the deep end was pretty gnarly. Had really uneven, kind of funky, lumpy transitions, and a lot of vert. So I don't know, maybe like 8-foot transitions with 2 feet of vert, I think. But it was just because it was so awkward. And then the face wall had like the weird thing you would see every now and then at a skate park. So the face wall, as it was curing, the face wall kind of fell in a little bit. So meaning that if you looked at the face wall of the square pool from the side, the transition would go like that and then kind of like this. And so there was like a bump in the middle of it. And it was really hard to skate. So nobody skated the face wall of the square pool for sure. The corners were good. They were big, wide corners, but the only approach really to get to the corners was straight in from the entrance, and then you carve the corner and you come out. But there was one wall, the south wall, that was really good. Just had it must have been maybe a 6-foot wide section where the transition was good and it wasn't too gnarly. But there's pictures of a lot of people skating that wall. In fact, somebody at some point found a picture of me doing an invert on that wall. And so that's out there. But Grant Britton has a really famous photo of Mike McGill doing a frontside corner air around that would be the north corner. So there's pictures of people riding the square pool, but it just wasn't as common because only the hardcore locals would actually session it. And then the beginners like me would skate it all day because nobody else wanted to ride it. But that said, so it was kind of rough and weird transitions, and it definitely took out a number of people. I remember at a contest, we're all practicing, for the keyhole. It was where the contest was. And our good friend Cameron Tabby Tight was warming up in the square pool and knocks himself out in there. And yep, here come the paramedics and off to the hospital. So yeah, there's lots of that going. Yes, see, Bill Billing knows about going off the coping of the deep end and then onto what they call noping, where there's no coping. But yeah, so stuff like that. And then, kind of just doing things as you got used to it. You could do things from the deep to the shallow and vice versa. But anyway, so that's really kind of what it was. It was, if you were the local that skated there every single day, you kind of ended up skating a bunch of stuff. And the square pool was definitely not for the faint of heart because it was gnarly. And then at one point, the face wall, there was one coping block that just came out, and so they would just pop out. And so us daring people would treat it like a little channel and jump over that face wall. But that's only because we were bored out of our minds with everything else. Yes, Grant Britton, deadly. That thing was deadly. Yeah, so I did get to see, unfortunately, I get to witness young Lori Rigsby do a corner carve and pile drive headfirst straight into the flat bottom and out cold. And I think she was out for 7 hours, I think is what it ended up being, something like that. But yes, so she was out cold, snoring, paramedics, off to the hospital, and then still out for many hours after there. So, yes, concussion, yes, deadly. So, anyway, so that's my story, my little chunk of the Del Mar Skate Ranch, and where I guess if it was still here, we might ride it. But yeah, we would just go back to the reservoir. The res, as we like to call it But yeah, so I've got this at my house, and to remind me of skating something not very easy to skate.